Alustame tänase Imagine'i 10. aasta juubeliseminariga 10 Years of Imagination. Mu daamid ja härrad, lubage esitada täna siin legendaarses kinos Sõprus maailma suurima reklaamiagentuuride keti The Network One vaimne isa Julian Bolding. Šoti viski viimne mohikaanlane Graham Atha. Maarjamaa teraslindude taltsutaja Mart Lubi. Hispaania reklaamimatador Gonzalo Figari. Argentiina disainikuningas Lorenzo Shakespeare. Daamid ja härrad, teie ees tänase peo peremees Margo Kütt.
Tere hommikust, head sõbrad, on reede 1. november ja aastanumber on 2013. Täpselt 10 aastat tagasi alustas tegevust reklaamiagentuur Imagine. Kõik see sündis üsna juhuslikult, nii nagu paljud asjad siin maailmas sünnivad. Oli 4 inimest, kes tahtsid muuta mitte ainult reklaamimaailma, vaid tervet maailma ja meil olid mõned segased kliendid, kes meisse ka uskusid. Täna tuleb hästi mõnus päev. Meil on 5 maailma tasemel esinejad 5 erinevast maailma riigist. Erki juba ütles, meil on Julian Bolding Inglismaalt, Graham Atha Šotimaalt, Gonzalo Figari Hispaaniast, Mart Lubi siit samast Maarjamaalt ja kõige kaugem külaline on Lorenzo Shakespeare, kes sõitis kohale Argentiinast. Ma tahaks, et teil täna oleks hästi mõnus olla, mis tähendab seda, et seal taga on kohvi, tee, karastusjoogid, suupisted ja tundke ennast hästi vabalt, minge võtke nii kui janu tekib või soov suupistete järgi on olemas. Meil ei ole täna sellist traditsioonilist seminari kohvipausi, ehk et me teeme hästi lühikesed 5-minutilised reklaamipausid ja siis on tegelikult see kõige parem aeg minna ja võtta siis neid suupisteid ja karastusjooke. Kui teil on mulle või tänastele esinejatele küsimusi, siis saatke minu meiliaadressile kõik küsimused, et meil sellist mikrofonivooru ei ole ja minu meiliaadress on margo@imagine.ee ehk et eesti keeles siis tõlgituna margo@imagine.ee ja ma saan kõik need küsimused siin kätte ja siis esitan meie tänastele esinejatele ja külalistele. Meie tänast meelt lahutab muusikalise poole pealt DJ Erki Sarapuu. Tema kätte võib toimetada täna kõik soovilood, mis iganes soovid teil on. Minul on üks soovilugu kohe küsida sinu käest.
Ma loodan, et sa ei hakka seda lugu küsima nii nagu tavaliselt klubis kuskil tuleb inimene ja ütleb, et kuule, mängi seda laulu, mille videos ühe jalaga trikirattur teeb jalgrattaga trikke.
Ma just mõtlesin, ma küsin su käest, et lase mulle seda praeguse aja seda kantrilugu.
No seda võib ikka. Aga miks sa ei tantsi, Margo?
Ma teen seda pärast poole. 10 aastat on päris pikk, aga samas hästi lühike aeg. Kui mõelda, mida kõike me selle 10 aasta jooksul oleme teinud, siis üks, mida me kohe kindlasti ei ole teinud, me ei ole ennast mitte kunagi poliitiliselt sidunud. Ja seda üsna lihtsal põhjusel, et me naudime täiega seda tunnet, mida me saame siis, kui me poliitikute üle nalja viskame. Ja ausalt öelda, mina näiteks naudin seda rohkem kui iseenda üle nalja visates. Me tegime United Colors of Benettonile nende kurikuulsa Unhate kampaania kodumaise versiooni. Suured sõbrad, peaminister Andrus Ansip ja Tallinna igavene linnapea Edgar Savisaar. Meil õnnestus päris hästi ka pärast äsja lõppenud valimisi Edgar Savisaare võidust teavitamine rahvusvahelistele uudistekanalitele ja kõige rohkem rõõmu tunneme me selle üle, et õnnestus isegi Põhja-Koreas pildile pääseda.
평안북도 철산 철산군 서해 위성 발사장에서 운반 로켓 은하 3을 통한 광명성 3호 2호기 위성의 발사가 성공했습니다. 위성은 예정된 궤도에 진입했습니다. 거듭 말씀드리겠습니다. 12월 12일 평안북도 철산군 서해 위성 발사장에서 운반 로켓 은하 3을 통한 광명성 3호 2호기 위성의 발사가 성공했습니다. 12월 10일 평안북도 철산군 서해 위성 발사장에서 운반 로켓 은하 3을 통한 광명성 3호 2호기 위성의 발사가 성공했습니다. 위성은 예정된 궤도에 진입했습니다. 거듭 말씀드리겠습니다. 12월 12일 평안북도 철산군 서해 위성 발사장에서 광명성 3호 2호기 위성의 발사가 성공했습니다. 위성은 예정된 궤도에 진입했습니다.
No nii. Koos olümpiavõitjast IRL-i poliitiku, et ei arvaks, et me oleme poliitiliselt ikkagi kallutatud, IRL-i poliitiku Erki Noolega andsime välja tema esimese ja seni ainsa ajakirja Kõva mees esikaane. Selle asja probleem oli see, et meil oli raha ainult esikaane tootmiseks, nii et sisulise osani me ei jõudnudki, nii nagu meie poliitikas kombeks. Soovolinik Mari-Liis Sepper on jäänud ka meil hammaste vahele. Me õpetasime, kuidas Apollo raamatupoes orienteerida erinevat sugu ja vanust omavatel inimestel ilma, et neid diskrimineeritaks. Vanaisale minu 9 kuud, mudilasele seks, vein ja kutsikad, teismelisele poisile lihtne teejuht sallide kudumiseks. Meie head konkurendid on üsna loiud olnud selle 10 aasta jooksul ja väga paljud on lasknud meid ennast nii-öelda mööda. Ainult 3 division Taevas ja Tank suudavad täna veel meid enda selja taga hoida. Ja muideks, mul on selle kohta ka üks tõesti sündinud lugu rääkida, et kord olid divisioni juht Rain Pikand, taevajuht Rein Iida ja tankijuht Joel Volkov Saaremaal Kaali järve ääres. Pikand näitas sõrmega järve suunas ja ütles, näe, siia kukkus meteoriit. Iida ütles selle peale imestunult, kujutad ette, kukkuski täpselt järve. Volkov mõtles veidi ja ütles see peale, head koolimaja ei kukkunud, mul on seal kuldvana tööde näitus väljas. Aga tegelikult me ei tulnud täna siia lolli nalja tegema. Meil on, nagu öeldud, 5 suurepärast esinejat ja 5 väga head ettekannet. Seega ma arvan, et asume asja juurde. Ja ma paluksin lavale maailma suurima turunduskommunikatsiooni agentuuride keti asutaja ja presidendi Julian Boldingu. Hello, Julian. Have a seat.
Thank you.
First, Julian, would you like to have some tea?
Some tea? Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Tea, please.
Thank you.
We Estonians know that you Englishmen are drinking tea more than actually we are consuming air. Is it right?
It's true, yes. But we usually drink it with milk in it,
Okay.
which is a little strange.
You want some milk?
No. Actually, it's better without, but we have to pretend to be English sometimes.
Oh, okay. Actually, I understand about tea, but what I don't understand about England is the beer, ale beer. How you can drink that?
Well, of course, we invented beer before people invented refrigerators.
I don't believe that.
So
It
you
was
have
in
to learn
Estonia.
to, and we are quite traditional. You know, we like to have a beer a little bit warm, and we like to have tea about the same kind of temperature, and it keeps us in a kind of balance. You know, we are sensible, balanced people, and never get passionate, and you know, we just drink a cup of tea if we have a problem.
Fantastic.
So you think I'm going to have some problems because you brought me tea? Maybe. Okay, we'll
yeah.
find out.
Actually, Julian, talking about marketing and advertising, you created currently world's largest independent agencies network about 10 years ago, in same year as we created Imagine.
There's one important difference, Margot. You launched yours on the 1st of November,
Yeah.
Which is a good day. We launched ours on the 1st of April, which is the Fool's Day.
So nobody believed it.
Well, in case it all went wrong, and it didn't actually work, you could say it was a joke.
That's why you can't make any birthday party, because nobody's coming. They think that it's joke.
We did have a birthday party and nobody came. It was sad.
Okay.
No, not really.
Very good. How did you manage to do the world's largest network?
Well, it took 10 years to do. And the thing that we really started by saying is that we would not try to be exclusive. So we would not have like one agency in the US or one agency in the UK.
Yeah.
But we would work with anybody that was good at what they do and that we could help to develop their own international capability. So we kind of went to this with an open mind, and it's not a traditional concept. I started it actually completely the other way around, and it didn't work because every time we had some business that needed an agency of a certain type and we didn't have it, we couldn't help. So I thought, let's tear that up and start again. So we are very open-minded. One of our clients called it open source creativity, and I kind of quite like that, so we use the word sometimes.
I like long names, because it's getting people so confused. So they don't understand, they believe every word what you say.
I hope so. Sometimes they do.
All right.
See if they sign the check.
You have very interesting presentation today. I went through it very quickly yesterday, and you're going to talk about brand, or small brand. How to make small brand big.
Well, that was a nice suggestion, actually. Thank you for the suggestion originally. So then I had to think a little bit about how to do this. So we'll see. I hope you like the presentation.
Okay, Julian, stage is yours, so please.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I was trying to learn some words of Estonian, but I must admit, I didn't succeed to memorize them correctly. So what I was just going to say is the thing that has struck me coming to Estonia is it may be a small country compared with India or China, but has the biggest welcome and the nicest heart that I've come across anywhere. So maybe it's a good theme to start with this idea of how to make a small brand big. Some thoughts. Just a little background. I jump over this because Margot's very kindly introduced us already, but we have grown to be that size. But I'm not here to talk about us. I'm here to talk about the subject. A long time ago in London, which is where I come from, there was a man, Samuel Johnson, and he's famous for writing a dictionary, the first dictionary in the English language, I believe. But he also had this great phrase, and he says, build a better mousetrap that catches mice better, and the world will make a path to your door. In other words, all you have to do is make a better product, and the world will come to you. Is it true? I don't know. Things have moved on a little bit. There are many, many different sorts of mousetraps in the world today, and we have to perhaps try a little harder to make a brand. So who do we think has been successful at building a brand from a small base to a huge global, if you like, success? Well, there's many ways to do this, and we're going to look at some of these. I read several business books when I was trying to prepare for this presentation, because fortunately Margot asked me several months in advance, so I had a lot of time. You need to do a great deal of research. You have to do focus groups, you must do big studies, you must look at social media, you must make a kind of a clearly defined target, look at the demographics of your potential target audience, the psychographics of your audience. I went through a careful methodology with 85 different parameters designed by a man called Norman Strauss many years ago, how to make a clearly defined business brand positioning. You need a 5-year business plan. You have to make sure that you get investor funding in place, otherwise you can't make good quality without a lot of budget behind you. you must have a detailed marketing plan, and you should be ready to scale and be sure that you hire WPP or Omnicom, because if you are going to be big, you will need that you'll need that scale, and really only groups like that can provide it, I guess. Well, A, I thought that was quite boring, and B, it's not remotely true. All of those things, by the way, are serious. It is what you read in a business book. It might be right if you're a giant corporation and you want to get a 0.1% extra market share. It is simply not the way that successful big brands have been built in our century. So we're going to forget all of the rules and all of the theory and take a simple look at who has built big brands and how they've done it. And I just think it'll be much more interesting, much more fun, and actually much more true. And the first example I just wanted to mention, because it's famous from Estonia, and you don't need an Englishman to come and tell you this, but Skype, of course, and was one of the brands that we used as an example back in 2009, when the real crisis was all across Europe. And one of the independent agencies in London we worked with, called Albion, they had a budget to promote Skype in the UK, and nobody knew Skype at all. And they had a very small budget to do this. It really could not afford advertising. And so they hired this lady who became known as the Skype nomad to travel the world and send back little video clips. Remember, this is 5 years ago. It's not anything like so common as today. And she ended up with 800,000 followers. Everything she sent was via Skype, and it kind of took people from us believing that Skype was a sort of like freaky thing that only geeks could manage to something that perfectly ordinary people could use all the time from any part of the world over any sort of phone connection. And we created out of that the idea of the zero budget campaign. So thank you very much for Skype, and that helped us sell a lot of work to clients 5 years ago. But here is my kind of revised theory. The 10 things that really matter if you're going to build a big and successful brand. The first thing really, and this is absolutely true, and anybody who's started a business themselves knows how true this is, it is be dedicated. You cannot do it half-heartedly. You will have to have a lot of people saying it's a really bad idea. And it took about 6 years before my wife started saying to me, Julian, when are you going to get a proper job again? And actually, I'm in advertising, so I never did have a proper job, but she didn't necessarily know that at the time. So the first question is be dedicated. This is a great book, if any of you have not read it, by the New York Times journalist Malcolm Gladwell, called Outliers, and it is what makes really exceptional performers. And he looks at anybody who's good at things in their own field, be it music or sport or anything that demands a skill. And he has a kind of approximate theory. It takes about 10,000 hours of practice to be a really good footballer, to be a really good violinist, to be really good at a skill. And it's the essence of it is, it's not the people with talent who succeed, it's the people who have talent and are dedicated. So I think that's my first example, my first question. And I want to take a little example from each of these principles. And the one I picked from here is James Dyson in the UK, an engineer, an entrepreneur, started his own company to sell vacuum cleaners using a different technology from the way that everybody else's vacuum cleaner was. He went bankrupt about twice. He had to mortgage his house. He sold a lot of his own possessions because he believed in the concept, but eventually got it accepted. And it is one of the most revolutionary kind of pieces of engineering that you'll see. Just a little clip.
Reinventing the vacuum cleaner has been an obsession of mine for the past 17 years. It began with cyclone technology. For me, the fundamental answer to loss of suction. Next, we eliminated bags. Then came our ball. There really had to be another way to push a vacuum around the home. Our mission is simple. Solve the obvious problems, whatever it takes.
So that was one side of being dedicated. I mean, there's many, many other examples. This is one that I've always found inspiring. We're not going to look at another film, but it's the Mr. Honda, who invented Honda, a fanatic about the perfection of engines in cars. And if you've seen films or documentaries about Honda, it's incredible, the dedication to perfection. They wouldn't launch a diesel engine for about 20 years after anybody else because they couldn't make it work quite as well as their petrol engine. Dedication. The next question, be seen. Well, obviously, you have to promote yourself. These days, there's an awful lot of talk about viral videos and finding ways to get seen. And we could play several of those, and we'd probably take about a half an hour and be quite amused. But actually, I just want to take 2 examples for Be Seen that are really, really impressive. And one is the story of when Forrest Mars, that's Forrest Mars Jr., the son of the original founder of the Mars chocolate and food company. And the story goes that Forrest Mars Sr. sent his son, Forrest Mars Jr., to Europe to launch the Mars bar. And he had no budget to do it. All he had was some product samples. And what he did was he took all the product samples, removed the product, gave it to people so they could try it, but kept the wrapper. And then he went out very early on a Monday morning, or maybe it was a Sunday morning, and he threw all the wrappers into the street all around London. So people come by, they think, whoa, what is this? God, I see these wrappers everywhere. It must be really good. It must be really popular. So he used, and he got the product seen, and it was how they established kind of the original kind of word-of-mouth, viral, if you like, communication back in the 1940s. The other example, because he could fit into many categories, is Steve Jobs. And the reason I was going to show this, and I forgot, of course, I wasn't going to show it off my own Mac. It was a little story that goes when Steve Jobs invented the MacBook. And the whole thing about Apple is it's the perfect user experience. So really, when you look at your Mac, it should have an apple that looks towards you. But it doesn't. It's the other way around. So it actually looks away from you. Because, as you know, and I'm sure you've seen it in 1,000 Starbucks cafes, when you flip the Mac open, all the people in the audience see the little illuminated apple. And it was the one kind of time in Steve Jobs' life where he went away from the idea that you have to have the perfect user experience, because he was convinced that you also need to be seen. So be seen, that's my kind of second point. The next one is really be lucky. However much you might try, however much you may work, you still need a little bit of luck in life. A couple of examples from that. This is one from a client of ours in London, Boots, the pharmacy retailer, and they also make their own skincare products. They have a fairly simple, not cheap but not expensive anti-aging cream. You can buy this for about 17 euros in the pharmacy. And there was a program on a documentary science series on the BBC television. And it's probably the most long-standing, respected documentary program that the BBC has, called Horizon. And they did a survey on anti-aging creams. And really, they set out to prove they didn't work. And they proved that they didn't work. Except, for some reason, luck, judgment, truth, who knows, it turns out that this particular product, number 7, Protect and Perfect, actually did work. So from one night to the next morning, the entire stock of their e-commerce store sold out. There were queues around outside all the Boots stores, and they had to literally make waiting lists of people to buy this skin cream. But I don't think they didn't know it was coming. It was a complete surprise. A perfect example of a piece of luck. The other lucky question I wanted to talk about is one of these shows. I don't know if you have them here. In England, we call them the Dragon's Den. It's been franchised to other people, other countries around the world, and it's where entrepreneurs can come and pitch their ideas and get people who have got more experience and some money to back them. And this is a guy called Levi Roots, and he is evidently a Jamaican, and invented a great chili sauce and came and pitched his idea. He probably didn't give the most professional marketing presentation, but it's quite a nice story. So this is just a clip from the TV show.
Next into the den today is London-based reggae musician Levi Roots. He's been successfully selling his product locally for 15 years, but thinks the time is right for expansion nationwide. He's asking for an investment of £50,000.
Put some music in my food for me and give me some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I called it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. Just like my baby, it's the perfect delight. It's got some peppers and some herbs and spice. Me want some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. So nice with your fried chicken. Make burgers finger licking. And rice and peas and fish. Put some reggae sauce on your list. Thank you.
And he got £50,000 for that. So a little bit lucky, I think. The other, just to move to a little bit more serious as well. I mean, one of the major trends of today, society today, is the search for things which are authentic, which are not fake brands created to kind of tell a story for commercial reasons. And there are, when we sat down in the office in our team to kind of think of examples for this, we got hundreds of these. It's the easiest example to find. But just to pick a few, and a lot of them are food. If you have something which is an authentic product and has an authentic story behind it, it has a huge amount of conviction today. And this is a story of 3 university graduates. They were not at university, as that chart might imply. They were people who had got well-paid, much sought-after jobs, working in finance and law in the City of London. They were successful young professionals. They just hated being bankers and lawyers. So they wanted to do something different, and they went to Glastonbury, the pop festival, and set up this little stall, and they made some fruit juices and smoothies, and started to sell these. And they were not sure. After a day, it seemed to have gone quite well. But they weren't really sure whether they should do this instead of all the banking or the accountancy careers that they had. So what they did was they had a sort of bucket, and they asked people to vote. And they said, when you've drunk your cup of juice, if you think we should give up our jobs in the City of London, put your cup into this bucket. If you think we should stay in our jobs in the City of London, put your cup into the other bucket. And they said they will take the story and see which one they went. And they got so many cups in the bucket that says, give up your job and make this juice, that they did. And that's how Innocent, which is now a big brand, started from a very small root. This is another guy. He had a potato farm. Tyrrell is not his name. His name is Will Chase. And he bought a potato farm, or owned a potato farm, called Tyrrell's Court. And it made great potatoes. But potatoes are cheap. So, every year he's struggling to make money. And wonders if he should give up. And just has the idea, maybe there's something else I could do with my potato. Because of the quality of the potato. And he turned it into potato chips, potato crisps. Launched a brand called Tyrrell's. Very little money or funding. About 10 years ago. And he grew this brand principally by word of mouth. I mean, had nice packaging, nice design, but essentially it was just a good product, and people started to talk about it because everybody knows that, Unilever and PepsiCo and the giant corporations make potato chips. But Tyrrell's, the potato farmer, could do it too. And, he's very careful. It's still true to its roots. He only uses potatoes from this particular farm. Carefully sourced, carefully looked after. Doesn't matter about the size, but the quality. Doesn't put artificial ingredients and flavors and chemicals into it. And he ended up selling that brand for £100 million out of the byproducts of a potato farm. But the point was, it stays true to its heritage. This is another one from the US. And it's a similar kind of thing. There really is a man called Bert Shavitz, and his partner, Roxanne Quimbley. And he was a beekeeper. And out of the honey and beeswax that the bees made, his wife found that actually they worked really, really well as cosmetics. and said, you should market this as a cosmetic. He said, don't be crazy. But kind of thought maybe he should. And the whole brand was created around exactly this, around Burt's Bees. It's, as he says in this little chart, which we picked off their website, it's not just a business model, it's our life's work. And all of the products have, Burt's own face on it. Just want to show this little film, which is actually an advertising made by Baldwin and, which is one of the agencies we work with in the US, just kind of captures the idea of nature and authenticity. The next point, and you start to see a theme kind of developing here, because if you think of the people we're talking about, Will Chase of Tyrrell's Farm, Burt himself, James Dyson, they're people, they're individuals, they're entrepreneurs. And very often, we hadn't set out to write the presentation this way, but very often it came across that these great big brands are created by individuals and by entrepreneurs. And some of those take that to another dimension, which is literally they become the brand. And I think, there's something in all of this that is about be yourself. Don't try to create a false personality, and be good if you're really kind of a more aggressive person, or be what you are not. But the people who create some of these brands are people who are personalities themselves, and their personality becomes the brand. And there are many, many examples of this, and just picked a few to show how different they can be. Jo Malone, who created simple cosmetics, more or less, in her own kitchen, and sold them to friends. And it became, these are really nice. Gosh, can you make more of these? You should do this commercially. And it grew to be, a famous and probably now worldwide brand of fragrances and cosmetics. Ben & Jerry. I mean, yes, okay, now Ben & Jerry is owned by Unilever, because with all Unilever's billions of dollars that goes into ice cream research, they could not create something that had the premium cachet of the natural products that Ben and Jerry, and yes, is a real Ben and a real Jerry, created themselves. And I don't know how many hundreds of millions of pounds Unilever paid for that. Richard Branson, the archetypal example. I'm old enough to remember when Branson started out, and he had a record shop, which was on Oxford Street in London, but he could not afford actually a shop. So he rented a space just above a shoe shop. And there was no kind of way to see really where it was, but you just had to kind of know that if you went through the shoe shop and up the stairs at the back, you would find a record shop. And they sold records, That's CDs today, or not even CDs, downloads. But they sold LPs, and they sold them for 25% off the regular price. And nobody in the UK did this. Even people said, is it legal to sell these things for less than the official price? Well, it was legal, and he did do it. And I do remember kind of sitting there. You could go there, you could listen to what you wanted. You didn't have to bring your own drugs, because if you breathed in, you would be pretty high after about a half an hour. So it was a real cult thing. But it started off as Virgin Records, and then the rest is history. And he started the airline and the cola and finance products and everything else that goes with the Virgin brand. J.K. Rowling. I mean, this is an interesting kind of left field example. You'd say, well, is Harry Potter the brand? Of course, Harry Potter is an incredibly successful brand, and is spun off into kind of experiences and franchise and theme parks and movies and God knows what else. But the interesting thing is she's becoming a brand herself. And the two latest books that she has written, which are not to do with Harry Potter at all, and one has a beautiful mystique. She wrote it under another name, got it published by people who did not know who she was. It's a detective, it's a crime fiction story. And then it sort of let it seep out that it was actually her. So this is someone, who's moved on from developing a brand, Harry Potter, to a brand herself. And you can go to Edinburgh, I think that's right, Graham, isn't that right? And you can visit the cafe where she sat, because she was a single mother. It was cold at home and warmer in the cafe. And she used to go to the cafe in Edinburgh and write the Harry Potter books. And you can do the tour and see it. But she's becoming a brand herself, quite interesting. The other thing, I guess, you have to put in a presentation like this is you've got to be smart. This could, again, be subject of many presentations, but just picked a couple of examples. I went in Singapore last month, a couple of months ago, to a course by Hyper Island, a digital college. And because I thought I should, actually learn about digital as opposed to asking my younger assistants how to fix these things. And they gave a lot of business cases, and one of them was Amazon. And it's all about how you think of Amazon as a bookstore, but it started off as a logistics company. How do you get deliveries efficiently from here to here? Then it went to books, then it goes to other products, and then it goes to kind of other services that once you've got a lot of computing power, you can put together. So Amazon is now selling cloud computing, and it goes, each little increment of the business takes it further and further, and it's why when many internet businesses kind of come up and then go down, it just grows and grows and grows. And one of the smartest things they showed was how Amazon learned that the little button on the screen that says buy, if you just say buy, people go, oh, I'm not sure, maybe I'll think about it later. And if you go, hit this button now, and you will get delivery of this book by 5 o'clock this evening in your home. And it was that little nudge, and I picked nudge from the book because it's a great book about that whole issue, about how little cues make people behave in a different way. And Graham and I will know, because we went to the Marketing Society in London and heard the British government's cabinet secretary, who's worked with the last 4 prime ministers, say this is the most influential book in the British government. Nudge, by the way. It's just about how little cues change people's behavior. But not to get too far off the track. That was that. And obviously, Facebook, Google, you can't have a presentation on growing big brands from small beginnings without those two. I like this quote. It was I heard it in a conference. I didn't invent it. And they said the smartest thing about Google is people think you are Google's customer, actually not. You're Google's product. And it was just a moment that the penny dropped for me. What a brilliant, smart piece of thinking that was, to actually take the customers and make them the product. It's the knowledge of where you go, what you see, what you do, that Google and Facebook are selling today, not the consumer benefit. Be engaging. Get the consumer on your side. Make the consumer or your customer do the work for you. Just one example of this, but it's such a beautiful one, from India. India, a small entrepreneurial company, created a brand called Hippo. And essentially, it's like salty snacks, like potato chips or rice crackers and things like this. And the problem they had was, they would sell them, but then India doesn't really have supermarkets. India has little corner shops or street shops or vendors on the street. And it was impossible to track where the products were, when things were out of stock. No one would ever know. Someone went to the little corner shop. Did they have the product? Did they not? And they were really wrestling with this problem without a big sales force of their own to go around and take orders and check. So they came up with a fairly novel solution, which is this.
Necessity, the mother of all invention. Presenting Plan T, the alternative inventory tracking system invented by Hippo. The story of how a snack brand with 1/10 the budget of its competitors used Twitter to reach out to customers across 400,000 stores and got them to voluntarily track its inventory. Hippo Baked Munchies entered the Indian snack market with a chirpy, lovable personality and a simple yet insightful universal philosophy. Hunger is the root of all evil, so don't go hungry. Soon, Hippo charmed the nation and became a runaway success. However, this unexpected demand overwhelmed Hippo's nascent distribution network. In India, where 92% of the retail market is unorganized, inventory tracking is an on-ground exercise undertaken routinely by sales staff who visit the local stores, which is a time-consuming and logistical nightmare. Since Hippo's existing inventory tracking network was nascent, Hippo needed to develop a new cost-effective system to cope with the demand. Hippo turned to Twitter and urged his followers to join his cause of fighting hunger and inform him via a tweet whenever they found empty Hippo racks in stores. Hippo promised to replenish stocks within hours. Tweets poured in from over 50 cities. People were tweeting from hypermarkets, supermarkets, and local grocery and general stores. This phenomenal response resulted in creation of a dedicated core cell at the company's headquarters. These Hippo inventory tweet trackers monitored, analyzed, and passed on information collected from these tweets to the local distributors in respective areas. People who tweeted in regularly with stock information were rewarded with product hampers and hunger fighter certificates. With Plan T, Hippo was able to restock and supply stores across the country. Since demand was never a problem, Hippo managed to match this with supply, increasing sales by 76% within a few months of launch. Plan T also helped Hippo gauge demand, prioritize, and identify new markets. Today, Plan T has found a permanent place in the brand sales and distribution system. In fact, Plan T also enabled the brand to measure the return on investment of each tweet. Never before in the history of marketing has a brand been able to get consumers to track inventory. It is now a case study taught to students at leading management schools and has also been featured in publications and books by online marketing gurus, along with more than 500,000 blogs and articles. Even Twitter, at the Elite TwitterCon 2010 in San Francisco, acknowledged that Plan T was one of the most innovative uses of social media. Today, Plan T continues to be one of the most talked about marketing inventions to come out of an emerging market such as India. Plan T showcased that social media can be leveraged as a powerful marketing and sales tool, so much more than just a mere medium for communication. And this is just the beginning.
So you start to kind of like see a little, maybe a pattern here. A dedicated entrepreneur creates a business, has a smart idea, gets a little bit lucky, stays true to his roots, and then gets his customers, his consumers on site. Because part of the big point about building a small brand to be big is you can't do it all yourself. You've got to get people to do it with you. There's many examples, but that was quite a good one. And maybe perhaps the last point I want to raise is something which I think has become much, much more important in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say. And at the beginning, I was going to do actually a whole presentation on this, but Margot thought a whole presentation on one subject might be a little dull. But it is a critical point, and we first picked this up from research by people who were monitoring e-commerce sales. And they found that about really kind of 3-4 years ago, you started to see a big difference between companies who behaved ethically and sales of their brands. You know, if you go back kind of 2 or 3 years or longer, you know, people thought of the brand as an entity, and all of the theory about branding was the brand is a personality and an entity in itself. And today, with Google and the ways of finding out who's behind the brand, people, especially younger consumers, but really everybody, wants to know what is the company standing for. And the idea of having an ethical company behind the brand becomes more and more important. And as you grow, you have to do this. And there's dozens of examples we could pick. I just picked this one because it is a little entrepreneurial company called Newton Circus in Singapore. And they came up with an idea themselves, which they then sold into Singapore Telecom and 2 or 3 of the big handset providers in Singapore. And it's about how to use old phones, because there are billions of them on the planet.
Smartphones have never been more popular. Acting as an extension of ourselves, they're a place to connect, discover, and inspire. But those who would benefit most from this technology don't have access to it. Singapore has a growing elderly population who simply don't own smartphones. It was time for them to benefit from this technology. We launched Project Silverline, where old phones give new life. During the launch of the iPhone 5, Singtel, Singapore's largest carrier, enlisted the help of local celebrities to ask the nation to donate their old smartphones. Once donated, the phone was repurposed with a simplified home screen and preloaded with 5 apps specifically designed to help the elderly with their daily lives. For instance, the Well-Being app notifies the user of their daily medication, water intake, as well as health tips and videos. The Emergency app is an easy one-tap access to emergency services. The project was well received by the community, earning itself extensive coverage. An international rollout is also underway. But most importantly, over 1,000 seniors from both the Lion Befrienders and Willing Heart senior community groups received phones, helping the campaign succeed in reconnecting Singapore's aging population.
The last point, which is the sum of all of these, I guess, is not really a be anything, it's a believe. Believe in yourself. Just one example of this I want to pick. It's the Chinese entrepreneur, Jack Ma. And China is where the internet is going next. Don't believe all that stuff about China doesn't have Google and Facebook and stuff for political reasons. China doesn't have Google and Facebook because they are developing their own that they want to export to the rest of the world. And Jack Ma is one of the leaders of that. He's the owner of the Alibaba company, which is kind of eBay, and many other equivalent things rolled into one. And this is a film which is now touring Asia about Jack Ma, and it speaks for itself. It is the ultimate entrepreneur, believe in yourself movie.
They called him Crazy Jack.
Can you see why people think it's so much hot air? You don't make any money. You've got extraordinary claims, and yet you make nothing.
But for 8 wild years, I called this former English teacher boss.
Hey, Jack, you're here.
In 1995, he started China's first internet company.
我可以建立一个中国最大的国际信息库。
你要不约的话呢，很难给你做一个很满意的回答。
I decided to join his revolution and saw behind the scenes of a rising China. The road was never easy, and many mistakes were made along the way, but it was always an adventure.
我们所有的竞争对手不在于中国，而在于美国的硅谷。我们在这个所有的人的脑袋绝不比他们来长。
How are you going to grow in the face of an established company like eBay coming out with its Chinese language site?
We will win. We will make it because we are young and we never give up.
It is official.
Yahoo agreed to pay $1 billion in cash for a 40% stake in Alibaba.com. The move is designed to catch up with eBay.
China is open the door. And internet is the best way to let the people understand what's happening outside.
This is the story, in my own words and in the most honest way possible, of what I saw and what I learned at the front lines of a revolution half a world away.
世界给了我们这个舞台，全球给了我们这个机会，为随意人提供真正价廉物美的平台。谢谢大家。
So there you go. I guess, the common factors of all of this, they're individual entrepreneurs. They've used their own money. They ask for a lot from their friends and their family and the world, but they give a lot back. And I think that's kind of the theme. So, if you go back and think of all of those different factors, the 10 things that really matter. Be dedicated, be seen, be lucky, be authentic, be yourself, be engaging, be smart, be good, and believe. And that's where we're going to end the presentation, except that we noticed one thing about this list of 10 things that really matter. Do you know what it is, Margot? There's only 9 of them. So I didn't want to rewrite the whole presentation, but I knew there was something missing. So I thought, what is the one that is missing? And I think it's this. It's be happy. So I want to dedicate that to Margot and all of the team at Imagine, because it's your birthday. You're 10 years old. Margot, be happy.
Thank you. Julian, please have a seat. We have a couple of questions, actually,
Sure.
from the audience. First question, which is directly from your presentation, Oliver Lomp from Fingler is asking that if small brand goes big, what is the main danger?
I think the main danger is that you lose the quality or the integrity or the authenticity that made you be appealing in the first place. You kind of imagine the guy from Tyrrell's farm, and suddenly, there's a lot of demand for his potato chips. And he can buy potatoes from some other source or potatoes he doesn't really know, but he doesn't. Maybe he makes the farm bigger, perhaps, over time, but you don't give up the thing that made you believable and made you great in the first place. Stay with your own values. Don't change them.
What about the dedication? It's a good thing, but does there exist like over-dedication or over-perfectionism? Another question.
I don't think there is over-dedication in terms of commitment. I mean, don't let the business become your life to the extent that you then treat other people badly. You could say that, but then again, if you look at someone like Steve Jobs, if anybody's not read the Walter Isaacson book, it's a fantastic read. And it demonstrates how unkind he was to his own family, to his employees, to anybody who didn't match up to the same standards. But at the end of the day, there are billions of people in the world who are very grateful to what he did. So I'm not advocating that you should be bad or unpleasant. And don't lose your ethics. The be good is stay with your ethics. But you are going to have to, ask for a few sacrifices from people around you if you're going to make it to that level. We managed to keep our company and still have a family, luckily. But if you're going to be Apple, I think you have to. The more dedicated you are, the further and faster you go.
Finland is a small country, and they had Nokia. Estonia is even smaller. We had Skype. What do you think, is there any possibility that in some day we could have big brands, not to sell these global brands to some big fishes?
Yes, I mean, I do. It's interesting about Nokia. We worked with Nokia about 4 or 5 years ago on 2 or 3 projects, and I got quite friendly with one of the senior marketing people in London. And he was explaining to me why Nokia had to move all of its kind of marketing and creative people to London out of Helsinki. And he said, Helsinki, it's a small place, we're the big game in town. it's hard for us to find other people to come and join. Creative people don't want to come to Helsinki, so we're going to move to London. So they moved to London, and they thought they could access the talent pool from London. And you know what? It was a terrible idea. You know, I mean, Nokia was a Finnish company, had been a Finnish company for generations. You know, long before mobile phones. You know, timber and Wellington boots and goodness knows what else. And they kind of felt, you know, what made them good wasn't going to be good enough anymore. Big mistake. What happened was, they got a lot of people who wanted, you know, nice jobs with a nice company for a nice salary, and they lost the kind of the dedication of the people who wanted to work there. If you want to work for Nokia, you should have gone to Helsinki and worked there. I think that is, you know, the mistake that they made. So I don't think it's a question only of, can you build a brand from a small place? You should. If that's where you start, and you know, these are individual entrepreneurs, okay? You've got several million, or at least, you know, 1 million and something people here. There's no reason why an individual entrepreneur shouldn't develop and maintain the business, especially in today's virtual world, from where you start.
And one more question, actually, probably you will, like most, Rando Rannos from Smart AD is asking that there is trend in Estonia that independent agencies are more successful than multinational. Is it the trend also in global, or what's the situation?
Well, it's a controversial question, and obviously I'm a little biased because we do work with independent agencies. I think the things to remember are, you know, agencies are not all the same thing, okay? An agency that is essentially a creative agency that deals in a currency of ideas, you do not need a large scale to have ideas. You are actually much faster and more fleet and more maneuverable if you are smaller. And when we set out our kind of original credentials presentation, even 10 years ago, and we put, you know, we'll work with agencies that are more creative, that are more flexible, that are more entrepreneurial, and all those things, and the clients looked at it and they said, that's great, you know, fantastic, Julian, but you're missing the big point. And I said, what's the big point? And the big point is, you guys are faster. You know, what killed Nokia in the end wasn't just moving to London. They didn't move with the times. You know, look at it, back in China, you know, 2 years ago, you look at Alibaba's like eBay, and you know, Youku is like YouTube, and Renren is the Facebook of China. Renren's falling down. It lost half its market value. Why? Hasn't been fast enough into mobile communications. You know, and Facebook is rushing to get into mobile communications. You've got to be fast. So I think if you are creative and you deal in ideas, absolutely no disadvantage, and you see many clients moving that way. If you're dealing in scale and big data and volume of media buying, you might think that you need to be with a bigger agency. Actually, I think it's the other way around. I think the big WPP agencies are stuck in the middle because they're too big to be fast, but they're not big enough to compete with the Facebooks and the Googles, who are really, you know, Google itself is worth about 3 times as much as all of the big communication groups put together. Yeah. They are the squeezed middle, actually. It's not independent agencies. Independent agencies are nimble. Google and Facebook are the giants, and it's the WPPs who have the bigger problem, from my way of looking at things.
Thank you very much, Julian. I have a very special gift for you. It's actually probably the next global brand from Estonia. It's Click and Grow. So it means that if you want to plant something, you don't need to do anything, just to put and grow the plant, and this equipment will tell you what to do.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That'll suit me. I'm a no gardener. This is great for me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
What keeps the planet spinning?
Me läheme nüüd väikesele umbes 5-minutilisele reklaamipausile ja seejärel ajame juttu Imagine'i tegevdirektori ja minu äripartneri Helen Roonetiga. Nii et olge head, võtke suupisteid, kohviteed, karastusjooke, tundke ennast hästi, ja kui me alustame nii-öelda intervjuuga siin laval, siis ärge kiirustage tagasi, et tundke hästi mõnusalt.